Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hard Things Podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess, and this is going to be season 3, episode 6. Boom. Crushed it. That's actually episode 20. So there's 20 episodes I've posted, as I've outlined in the last few episodes, not always on time. It's kind of met with a little creative resistance inside myself, and upon additional reflection, it's just something that I think we all have to power through when it comes up. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad that I have. I'm glad that I will, because today is kind of on that topic. The kind of the source of our creativity, our creation, is what's on the menu. So this is known as the sacral chakra. For those of you who don't know, I am in chiropractic school, and this is kind of a fun episode for me because the sacrum is a major topic in chiropractic, a major area of concern. The SI joint, you may have heard it called. It's a sacroiliac joint where your hip bones kind of meet your spine and the base of your body, and it's a place of major power in a lot of ways. Your glutes, your legs, your hips, your abs, your back muscles, some of the strongest muscles in the body are all centered and kind of focused on controlling the movements of these bones, and really keeping them in place, but also generating a great amount of force for walking, running, squatting, you name it, all kinds of things. Hip extension, flexion. I could get into all that nerdy stuff, but and not only beyond that, we think of power as like muscles producing force, but also it's a great source of energy. It's kind of where the spinal cord comes to an end, roughly, kind of between the solar plexus and the sacral chakras. It doesn't go all the way down to the base of the spine, the sacrum, and even the tip of your sacrum, the coccyx. Kind of a interesting word to use there, as is oftentimes in the human body. But for me, this is kind of a near and dear subject because I do have SI joint pain. I think for a very long time I've had kind of what they would call a right short leg, due to twisting in my pelvis, just all the different muscular forces going on in there. Years of playing sports like baseball that cause you to be kind of asymmetrical, going from that to now doing Olympic weightlifting where you want to be very symmetrical, and pushing harder with one leg versus the other can cause some of these forces that push your skeleton out of line. And so, like I said, very near and dear to me, and also I think it just generally describes like your love life and your creativity as well. And for many years I felt like my ideas, I was kind of pre-judgmental of them. A lot of times it's scary to put your creations out into the world and be judged, especially in today's society where social media kind of makes it easier for everyone to access and respond. So it's definitely something I've always felt. I think early on in life, I just never taken criticism well, a bit of a perfectionist, and that is something that can be, caused. Caused as a, I think it's related to kind of having a blocked sacral chakra, being out of alignment in that area of your body, physically or otherwise. Energetically, I think, is another way, because we want this energy flowing up and down the spinal cord. Really, everything I talk about when it comes to these chakras is about the impulses from your brain, running through your nervous system, getting to your glands, getting to your organs, getting to your muscles, and allowing your body to perform in the way you need to perform. So this is why I love chiropractic, and this is why I'm kind of talking about all these things. And I also, not only outside of myself, I see a lot of issues in the world today. Low T, see low T clinics everywhere, and people just taking exogenous testosterone from outside their bodies, not made by their bodies, or women on hormonal birth control and having that system kind of out of whack. I think it's already a decently chaotic system. We don't need to influence it to, trying to control that. I think for a good reason, to not have pregnancy at a time when you're not ready to care for a child. But also, I think there are better ways to manage that without ruining woman's hormones to the point where, she's now not performing at her highest level. Because I think everyone in today's society, with the way our diet is, the way our exercise habits are, the way our stress is a huge thing when it comes to these hormones. I think, we're in a bit of trouble. And our world is struggling with these concepts. So I'm excited to get into it today. So that was a little teaser. I'll start over at the beginning. So the sacral chakra, for those of you who don't know, the sacrum is, if you basically feel in your low back, kind of right where, for lack of a better term, where your butt crack starts, that bone right there is your sacrum. So these used to be, when you were a baby and a fetus, they used to be segments of your spine, like your vertebrae. But then at the bottom, 5 of them fuse. 4 or 5 of them fuse, coccyx. I don't know, everyone's a little different too. But overall, it forms this large bony mass that then articulates with your hip bones. And it basically is your connection from your upper to your lower body. And so obviously very, very important. This is also, for women, this is where the uterus is. In men, obviously, testicles actually drop, far below where the ovaries reside. But that's really the glands associated with the sacral chakra are the gonads. And a lot of times the word gonads, I think it's kind of funny, are associated just with men. But the ovaries are technically also gonads. So gonads. We can all come together and have that chant. So, and I think a lot of people get squeamish when it comes to sex or reproductive organs, and maybe it's just because I'm in school and now we talk about everything like it's no big deal. It's not like the giggle fest you might have had in high school or junior high when you're first learning about this stuff. But I just have come to really respect the power of that whole system, including the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. So signals from your brain come from those 2 glands we spoke about in previous weeks, and make you create, for men, testosterone, for women, estrogen and progesterone. And the latter 2 being very important in kind of the monthly cycle that prepares women to possibly get pregnant and then clear out and kind of do it all over again. And then for men, testosterone, which is really the molecule of doing hard things that women also have. So Hard Things podcast, testosterone, very on brand in a lot of ways. But we're missing it. And I think much like kind of the virtues and the sins we talked about earlier in this season, I think it's just the proper expression of creative forces. So there's a creative force that makes us want to reproduce and further the human race. There's a creative force that makes you want to go out and, get a job and provide for that family that you created. These forces are very powerful, but when kind of directed in the wrong way, you get things like, sexual assault. You get things like, using your creative forces for evil. Like much like that. There's so many different examples that, I don't want to just start listing off all these evil ideas. But I think it's important to really just understand yourself, know thyself, know how to control, your things. A lot of times our kind of repressed traumas, things that happen to us early on in life, really kind of rule this area as well. And there's a lot of people out there that have all sorts of traumas, and some violent, some not, but even non-violent traumas that I know of, friends and family and people have shared with me, can be, devastating as well. It's all devastating. And so unless you know how to deal with it, how to kind of reel yourself back in when you're feeling a certain way, and how to basically redirect your energy. There's a good phrase called reparenting too, where, you can kind of pull your young self aside in your head, the traumatized part, and just say like, hey, it's, danger's gone now. It's not like that anymore. And you can redirect that energy in a good way. So one example for me is this podcast, using my creative energies to just talk about things I'm passionate about. I have no idea where this podcast is going in the future, but I have a feeling it's going to be useful to me in some way. So to keep kind of thinking about these topics, putting ideas out there, again, like trying to create season 4 coming up here. I still have kind of maybe a tiny inkling of what I want to get into, but it all is, if I'm not feeling creatively motivated for this podcast, you kind of just take a step back and look at like, where are my energies going to? Well, one thing for sure is school. So school is definitely going to take a lot of my time in the next 2 to 3 weeks with finals, and then I have 2 weeks off, which is great. But it is ultimately, up to me to balance that. I want to put good effort into this podcast, figure out what the season 4 looks like. But I also, I have a chance to do really well in finals and kind of go the scholarship route in some cases, I think. So, just balancing that. I'm highly aware of it right now. So, for me, with the podcast, it's easy. Just, today is Wednesday, July 31st. I'm technically a day late off my deadline, but I've been, 4 or 5 days late recently. So pulling that back on track, for sure going to be back on track next week. And kind of ending season 3 on a, hey, we almost lost it, but we brought it all the way back. Sounds good to me. So, just creatively, again, being able to balance that. And a lot of times when it comes to, those sex hormones, testosterone's kind of that, it can put you into a place where you're driven and you're accomplishing things and you're kind of working through maybe painful moments towards your goal. But it can also put you into overdrive and like domination mode and hyper competition mode. And, a little too much testosterone sometimes is a little bit over the top. And then under, having low testosterone leaves you maybe a little depressed, a little anxious. So again, having that regulated testosterone, not, overexpressing yourself. And this can be, people are addicted to porn and they're watching, porn is not actual intimacy with a real partner. But this kind of becomes that way for some people in their lives, and they're overexpressing themselves in a really dangerous way. It's dangerous to your body. It's overtaxing your resources, and it leaves you with no creative energy for anything else. So at that point, you're just kind of in survival mode, which we'll talk about next week. The final episode's really all about survival mode. So to come out of survival mode, you have to harness this creative energy and aim it upward to your lofty goals, whatever you are looking to accomplish. And same thing really for women too. So when women's hormones get out of balance, it can lead to weight gain, it can lead to infertility, it can lead to all kinds of horrible side effects with mood and depression, anxiety, same way as men with low T. And you hate to see that for women, and sometimes too they end up having kind of higher testosterone, almost take on like more masculine qualities, especially when stress hits. And today's world is a stressful world. It doesn't really feel safe for a lot of people. So I can definitely empathize, but at the end of the day, if we're looking for maximum health benefits, it may be a short-term strategy to get yourself through a tough time, tough breakup, tough, job, like losing work, getting through school, whatever it may be. But long-term, we are all benefited if we balance our hormones and balance our activities so that we are creating appropriately and not over or under creating. Because at the end of the day, you got to live in the moment. You got to create what you're here to create, do your thing, and that's how you can find harmony. So enough preaching on the chakra aspect of this. I want to bring it to the Marvel Universe, since we're about halfway through this episode. We're about 16 minutes in, and I'm on track. We're not going over. We're doing 30 minutes. 30 minutes was my original episode time, and for a while there, we just got into like an hour, and it just felt like marathons to me. So keeping it short and sweet. With Marvel, this stone is probably the least talked about of all the Infinity Stones, but it is the Soul Stone. It might have been the one in the movies that left me with the most feels, and that's something maybe to be said about that. But bring it back to our big bad Thanos. When he went to get the Soul Stone, it was his daughter Gamora who had found it, and basically they go to this planet, and you have to make a sacrifice. So when they get there, find out you have to sacrifice what you love most, and his daughter starts laughing and saying, well, you don't love anything, you're an evil man, and you don't value anything, you just do what you want to do. And he kind of starts to cry because he realizes it's her, and she doesn't realize it yet. So he ends up sacrificing her, kind of throwing her over this cliff and getting the Soul Stone. But that really is like the ultimate sacrifice, is laying down your life or the life of a loved one for your goals, like whatever this goal is. For him, it's snapping half of people out of existence. But you can almost like feel for him in a way, because I think we all know how it feels to lose something we love. So I think this is connected to what I was talking about with the sacral chakra, and that like it doesn't even have to be a sexual thing, it's just a creative thing. Like he created this daughter, like she may have been adopted from a planet that he terrorized, but at the end of the day, they worked together. They had as healthy of a relationship you can have in that scenario, and he really helped her grow into this badass warrior who ultimately did have the good head on her shoulders, because she left him to go work with the Guardians of the Galaxy and be a hero. And to see that all come to a head where he had to sacrifice her to get what he wanted, something maybe he didn't expect, it is a very sad part of the movie. And then also, if you're like me and you like Star-Lord a lot, Guardians of the Galaxy, you feel for him because he had kind of had a love thing going on with Gamora. So pretty sad all around. And to just double down on the sadness, later in the movie Endgame, the heroes, the Avengers, had to get the Soul Stone as well, to try and undo Thanos' snap. So it's Hawkeye and it's Natasha, the Black Widow, and they go to the planet, and they basically have this knockdown, drag out fight about who's going to go over the cliff because they realize what has to happen. And so they're really good friends, and they ultimately, just go head to head. They both love each other. It could be true for either or. And it turns out Natasha kind of wins the fight, jumps over the cliff, sacrifices herself. And again, like, she sacrificed herself because Hawkeye has a whole family with kids, and she may have kind of played hide the cucumber with the Incredible Hulk, maybe a little bit. But she ultimately said, like, hey, you guys gotta, she saw how devastating it was when the snap happened, and she said, hey, if I gotta sacrifice myself to bring those people back, no sweat. So ultimate kind of hero move there for her. And again, just realize kind of the cost. In life, there's cost to everything. The cost of your success. There may be some kind of negative aspects to it. And for me, this is something I've always struggled with. Is I know, at least partially, that my wins are going to come from someone else losing. And I don't think it's a zero-sum game. And there, like I said, there are finite resources on our planet, physical resources, but if you're making money, it's coming from somewhere, and the best you can try to do, I think, is really try to provide value, whatever you're exchanging for. So making money in a way that's giving back to whoever is paying you. And I think for me, chiropractic's going to be a great thing because I can kind of balance that feeling I've always had of, I want to be successful, but I also want to do it while maybe taking someone's pain away, helping them function better, making them a more productive and profitable person. So I think that is why I'm so aligned with my new kind of career path. But to bring it back to the sacrifices, it's just, life is really tough. And another way to bring it in too, I've had different relationships in the past where you get to a point where, like, hey, this person's really great, but our vision for the future, vision for a family is really just not the same. Whether it be location, or like number of children, people break up for all sorts of reasons. But I've been fortunate to have, a few people I've been with that are just fantastic people overall, but at the end of the day, it's just not the right fit overall. And man, it guts you to have to move on, but you got to also really commit to, like, love yourself and find yourself. And so, this has definitely been a challenge in my 20s for sure. The last 10 years, just being able to keep it moving when something is actually very good. These are good people that you're hurting, and you're a good person. You're hurting yourself. Really having to make that choice. So sacrifices do pay off, and probably one of the hardest things is just not knowing. I think Thanos threw his daughter over the cliff, not knowing if it was all going to work out. He's obviously got confidence in himself, but that almost makes it a little bit more heartbreaking on top of it. So really just doing your best with what you're doing, I think, is another part of it too. So with the soul stone, with the sacral chakra, it is kind of this, it's getting down to, the parts of life that are really just kind of raw and rough, like these kind of harsh truths that, if you want to get where you're going, you're going to have to give something up. You can't have it all. And I think a lot of people, myself included, I'm number one with FOMO, fear of missing out. The grass might seem like it's always greener, but really you got to be able to know like who you want to be, what you want to be able to actually get there. A friend of mine used to say, if you, I forget exactly how it goes, but it's like, don't give up for show money trying to get mo money, because then you end up with no money. And that's like kind of true. Is like if you try to get everything, try to accumulate everything, you end up with nothing. You see this a lot too. People go their whole lives, working, and they make a lot of money, and they say that money can't buy happiness. It can buy happiness. I personally think it does, but then there's like a number you get to where it just stops providing additional happiness. And once you get there, you should just focus on, putting people around you that are loving and are gonna like drive you forward to be your best person possible and like bring you love, because that's something you literally cannot buy, because it's generated from, I think it's just a feeling that you get around someone specific, and then it's something too that has to be cultivated and kind of gently tended to. So there is that initial spark, and then you got to just tend to that thing. And if you're not, paying attention to at least a little bit of that, you could be as successful as you want to be, but you're going to have all this money and kind of be alone. And you see, a lot of these billionaires, they, maybe stray from their relationship. Their kids are, estranged. They didn't spend much time with their kids. I think FOMO is probably natural the younger you are, but as you get older, you have to pare down what you're seeking to do, because at the end of the day, the really important things in life really can't be bought. And for me, that is things like love, is things like health, taking care of yourself over the course of decades. It might seem lame to forgo alcohol most of the time, but in reality, alcohol is not putting you in a good situation a lot of times. It's one thing if you get together with your buddies from the past and you have a couple of drinks, you have a great time, kind of let that one go. But if you're just going out on a random Friday and tying one on and, not really having any social benefit from it, like a planned social benefit, one that is really going to help you in life and help you, again, maybe tend to those like loving relationships. It's like, why drink? Why even do any of that? So it is that balance piece, knowing when to kind of lean into the fun and lean into the good times, and then when to dial it in and be disciplined and really tend to your health, get to bed early, get that extra sleep. I myself, we attended a neurology conference last weekend, and sleep is one of the most important things you can do, especially to bring it back to your testosterone and estrogen and progesterone. Sleep is really integral with the sex hormones. And these things ultimately contribute a lot to your mood and your overall health. So can't express enough of how you have to be balanced in your approach, how you have to have real relationships, create real love, create art, create things that connect you to other people in ways you might not expect. It doesn't even have to be sexually. People always default to that, I think, when it comes to topics like this, but you'd be surprised the amount of intimacy you can create from other situations. Like a brotherhood, for example, being on a football team and going through the suffering of all the practices, that's like a creative effort. A lot of that I went through when I was younger. I definitely wouldn't have done all that by myself. It was a lot of pain and suffering. So doing it to create those social bonds, in addition to all the other benefits, I think really went a long way to helping me through it. So to wrap it up, I think, one, more people should be talking about things like this, because the more we sweep it under the rug, the more people suffer, whether it's with their hormones, with their sexual encounters with people, non-sexual encounters with people. I think people out there are maybe lonely too, and some of these things that you feel like you have to do, or like the FOMO that comes into it, kind of get in the way of just go out and like try it. Go to a safe place, try something you want to do. If it doesn't work, no worries. You still got your health. Go home, get your sleep, get back to whatever you're doing. But like trying new things and again, like talking about this and like leaning into it. If it gets uncomfortable, be a little uncomfortable. And two, I would say don't resort to the easiest solution. I kind of mentioned it, but there's like low T clinics where men go and just get exogenous testosterone that's not made by their body, or women take hormonal birth control. It's a little bit harder to just maybe track your cycle and then maybe not engage in sexual activity, or at least maybe have that pull-out game strong. I don't know what to, they say abstinence is the only way, but I don't know. I feel like we can all control ourselves and resort to other forms of intimacy rather than just destroying our hormones. Hormones are like one of the most important things for your body, so just don't do that if you can help it at all. And yeah, just being, I think third most is like more kind to each other. The amount of stress that we create that's not actually like created by our environment, it's more like human, man-made. I think in some cases could be a little bit purposeful, so people are having to focus on things that maybe don't matter as much, or focus on the basics and be stuck in survival mode so they can't fight for themselves on other planes. But I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do think a lot of it too is just chaos and unintentionality, and unconscious living. If you just live consciously, what your actions are doing to you and to others. I think you would be, maybe disappointed because some of these risky behaviors you couldn't do anymore. But also you're not missing anything. The grass isn't greener. Like your health and your like loving relationships with other people are genuinely, like I can tell you from experience, what you're going to want to cultivate. And if you don't have those things right now, it's cool. You have time. Like you can literally start tomorrow. Just do something nice for someone. Say something nice to them. Your words are free, basically. So just really being conscious about what we're doing to each other, to ourselves, I think really will go a long way. With all that being said, I'm glad I kind of pushed through a little bit of a creative block that I was having myself. Glad to be almost back on time. I'll be back on time next week. At least we'll record on Tuesday, I believe. That should be an easy ask, an easy finish. And that will be the season finale of the season. It will be kind of an episode on survival mode, which I think is where a lot of people live and where they're stuck, maybe where they're blocked. And I think it'll be a good sequel into the fourth season, which I do have a little inkling of what I want to do, but I have to really draw out the idea. So I hope this episode was helpful. Next week should be a banger. It's going to be something that is relatable to a lot of people. And until then, I'm going to be thinking about this stuff and can't wait to bring the heat next week. For now, this is Blaine signing out.